Governments love to promise financial freedom. They tell you that stability is their mission, that prosperity is their goal, and that opportunity is your right. But if you trace the history of money long enough, you see the same ugly truth emerge. The system was never designed to set you free. It was designed to keep you dependent, to keep you paying, and to keep wealth flowing upward into the hands of the few. The greatest trick governments ever pulled was not taking your money outright. It was convincing you that the mechanisms that rob you were actually protecting you. This is not a modern story. It is as old as civilization itself. Ancient Rome, which once minted silver coins so pure they were trusted across continents, slowly stripped those coins of their value while pretending nothing had changed. The silver denarius that built an empire became a copper slug with a thin silver wash, worth almost nothing. And while ordinary citizens struggled to buy bread, the emperors told them the empire was strong, the money was safe, and loyalty was their duty. Inflation was the silent tax that no one voted for, but everyone paid. The trick wasn't brute force, it was illusion. The Middle Ages carried the trick forward in a different costume. Kings and queens learned that when their treasuries ran dry, they didn't have to ask politely. They simply declared forced loans. Wealthy merchants, guild leaders, and landowners were told to hand over their gold and silver for the good of the realm. In theory, it was a loan. In practice, it was robbery with paperwork. Sometimes repayment came years later in debased coinage. Sometimes it never came at all. The rulers kept their castles and their wars. The people kept the illusion that their sacrifice was patriotic. That same language, sacrifice, duty, stability, echoes today whenever governments justify policies that strip value from your pocket to fund their ambitions. Fast forward to the birth of central banking, and the trick becomes even more refined. When Britain created the Bank of England in 1694, it was not a charity. It was a mechanism for war finance. Wealthy investors bought government bonds, secured not by gold, but by the taxes of ordinary citizens. Every shilling of interest they collected was funded by higher duties on salt, beer, and cloth, the daily necessities of the poor. The rich lent money to the state, then lived off the taxes of the masses, all under the noble banner of national finance. It was elegant theft hidden inside a new invention, the bond market. But the greatest refinement of the trick came in the modern era, with debt and inflation disguised as progress. When governments spend more than they collect in taxes, they have three choices. They can admit the truth and raise taxes directly. They can slash services and risk revolt. Or they can quietly inflate the money supply. Inflation doesn't look like a tax, but it is the most reliable tax ever invented. Your wages rise, but your costs rise faster. Your savings buy less. Your retirement fund shrinks in real value. And every step of that erosion transfers wealth from the citizen to the state, from the saver to the borrower, from the worker to the creditor. Look at 2008. Banks gambled with toxic mortgages, nearly blew up the global economy, and were then bailed out with taxpayer money. The public was told this was necessary to save the system. But the system that was saved was not yours. It was theirs. Losses were socialized, spread across millions of taxpayers, while gains remained privatized. Within years, the very same institutions that had caused the disaster were bigger, richer, and more politically powerful. And ordinary people who had lost homes, jobs, and savings were told to be grateful that the collapse hadn't been worse. The trick here is always perception. Inflation is sold as growth. Forced loans are sold as duty. National debt is sold as investment. Bailouts are sold as stability. Pension reform is sold as sustainability. The vocabulary changes, but the transfer of wealth is eternal. Governments speak the language of protection while quietly writing the script of dependency. Consider retirement systems. For decades, workers in America, Britain, and Europe have paid into public pension funds. The story is that this money is carefully saved for the future. The reality is that most of it is spent immediately, replaced with IOUs. Future taxpayers are expected to cover the bill. It is, at its core, a generational Ponzi scheme. When the demographics shift, when fewer workers support more retirees, the system falters. And what do governments do? They raise the retirement age, reduce the benefits, and quietly inflate away the payouts. The citizen who thought decades of contributions guaranteed safety discovers that their nest egg is nothing more than a political promise, and political promises are only as strong as the next crisis. Quantitative easing, another modern marvel of financial trickery, takes the illusion to an even higher level. Central banks create trillions of dollars out of thin air, buy bonds and securities, and call it stabilization. And it works, if you're wealthy. Asset prices soar, stocks and real estate hit record highs, and the rich grow richer. But for the majority, wages stagnate, living costs rise, and the dream of home ownership slips further out of reach. The trick here is that the medicine was worse than the disease. QE didn't heal the system. It addicted it to cheap money, ensuring that every future wobble would require even bigger injections of liquidity. And then there is stealth taxation, the most insidious trick of all. Instead of raising income taxes directly, governments rely on indirect levies, sales tax, fuel duties, VAT, but above all, they rely on inflation. It is the perfect weapon because it is invisible to most people. A dollar today buys less tomorrow, and the difference flows upward. Politicians can claim they haven't raised taxes, but the effect is the same. The citizen's pocket is lighter, and the state's debts are easier to manage. Complexity itself becomes a trick. Financial systems are intentionally built to be too complicated for ordinary citizens to follow. Thousands of pages of tax codes, obscure acronyms, instruments so complex, even professionals struggle to explain them. All of it acts as camouflage. When you cannot trace where money is flowing, you cannot resist how it is taken from you. Rome's debased coins at least revealed their fraud in weight and color. Today's fraud is buried in spreadsheets, budgets, and jargon. And through it all, war finance remains the oldest and most dependable excuse. In World War I and II, citizens were told it was their patriotic duty to buy bonds. Today, trillions spent on conflicts in Iraq, Afghanistan, and beyond are financed through deficits and bonds, enriching defense contractors and creditors, while ordinary taxpayers bear the bill. Wars always end for the soldier, but they never end for the taxpayer. The debt lingers long after the battlefield is quiet. What does this all mean for you? It means that financial education is resistance. Economic history is a weapon. If you do not study the tricks, you cannot see them. And if you cannot see them, you cannot defend yourself. The governments of Rome, of medieval Europe, of 19th century Britain, and of modern America all deployed the same strategies. Debase the money, inflate the debt, privatize the gains, socialize the losses. Different costumes, same play. So here is the lesson. Never mistake official language for truth. When you hear stimulus, ask who profits first. When you hear inflation, remember it is not an accident, it is policy. When you hear reform, ask who is being reformed out of their savings. And above all, remember that the system exists to protect itself, not you. History doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it will crush you all the same. The financial tricks that kept Roman citizens broke are the same ones draining your wallet today. The only difference is whether you recognize them in time. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers, and I'll show you where to look.